What is Aruba Central? What is the difference between Mobility Master and Aruba Central? What is Mobility Master? What is Mobility Controller? How Mobility Master communicate with Aruba Central? How Mobility Controller communicate with Mobility Master? Where do we place Mobility Master in your network? Where do we place Mobility Controller? How many types of access point we have in Aruba? Which access point to deploy where, under which circumstances? So hello everyone, this is Ajit here. Welcome to Chilla one more time, and today we are going to release my first part of most asked Aruba wireless interview question and answers. Well, in this video initially I will be explaining you about the architecture of wireless that will help you for Aruba wireless, that will going to help you to understand about the how actual Aruba wireless deployed or designed on a very high level, so that it will give you a clear picture in your mind where we deploy mobility controller, mobility master, Aruba Central, how they communicate, all the stuff. Initially I will explain you in this video, and later on then I will move to the most questions. So if you are very new to Aruba wireless, then please go through my L1 interview question and answers, link in the description. If you are mediocre, then please go through my L2 video question and answers, link again in the description. However, if you just want to know the most asked interview question and answers, a kind of mix between L1, L2 and L3 and an architect, then please watch this video till the end, because every single questions will be going to clear, not only going to clear your concept, it was also going to help you to understand how wireless architecture work and basically how Aruba work. So if you're new to this channel, do subscribe my channel and do like and share with your friends. And thanks to everyone who become the member of this channel, and they must be enjoying the different content or video for them also. And if you want to be part of join this channel, join button, please click on join, take the membership and enjoy the content as per your requirement. So this is the first part, then I will release the second part, and then I will release my PDF for these questions. So if you want to buy the other PDF, as you can see on the screen, then please buy from the link in the description already there. And if you're looking for the job, do join my WhatsApp or Telegram channel, link again in the description. Let's move to the screen now. Hi guys, this is Ajit here, and let's understand what Aruba wireless architecture that we have. This is a setup, a normal architecture that we have in any network. So I've given a very high level setups where we have one data center with two link, MPLS and internet. And then we have in the data center, we have the authentication server, which can be ClearPass, Radius, AAA, whatever you can have in your network. And in the same data center, we have mobility master. And then we have an example site A, which has two links, MPLS and internet. One which is an access switch, then we have a core switch, and then have access point, and then mobility controller, and then the firewall, and then firewall terminate on the internet. So that's the connection that I have given to you for your understanding. Now, similar setup or same kind of setup that you can also see for in your network also, and same kind of setup that we have for Cisco wireless or Meraki wireless, but with different terminology and some different concept, but on a very high level, things remain the same. So, but let's focus on from the Aruba wireless point of view, how exactly things goes. So here in this diagram, in this video, I'm just going to explain you how basically your communication take place, where you deploy a mobility controller, where you deploy your mobility master, and how things goes from here. Because if you have this visibility in your mind, that can going to help you to understand, the kind of questions that can ask you during interview. So you should have a vision in your mind that whether you have actually worked on Aruba wireless or not. But with this simple setup, can help you to grasp the question, and then you can answer accordingly. Okay, so let's start this concept and this video now in terms of Aruba wireless. So as we all know that there are multiple access point in Aruba wireless, like campus AP, instant AP, spectrum AP, mesh AP. So that we are going to cover further, but on a very normal uses that we have, mostly we are you will see that you guys use or you come across two main kind of AP. One is your campus AP and one is your instant AP. Okay, what they are and how they function, that we have a separate videos for them. You can see on level 1 interview questions and answers. But here I'm just going to explain you about the communication that take place. So from this diagram, as you can see that in any of the site, we place mobility controller, and in data center, we place mobility master. So one question is asked, where do we place mobility master and where do we place mobility controller? So from this diagram, you can see that we place mobility controller on a specific site and mobility master we place in data center or in a hub site or according to your infrastructure, but not on the specifically on the remote site or any small site or something like that. Okay. Now, in terms of communication, if we talk about, you can see that core switch is connected to mobility controller connected to firewall, and then mobility controller also connected to your authentication server. So if any user that I have, for example, no, any user, now this user if connect to this access point, okay, this user connect to this access point. Now this access point will have a communication or will be connected to a access switch, and then access switch will connect to core switch. So this access point and this kind of in terms of WLAN or wireless, what exactly will happen that your access point advertise to multiple SSID, but let's talk about in a fundamental approach. So one is called the corporate SSID and another is called the guest SSID. So depending upon the kind of customer that you have or the kind of user that connect to your access point, he will connect to that specific SSID. And then once he will connect to this SSID, he wants to access two kind of traffic, whether he wants to access internet or he wants to access intranet. So as my name says, if customer wants to access internet, he will go to the internet, and he wants to access intranet. That means if he wants to access any application that is hosted in data center, or if he wants to talk to someone who is uh, on a different site, or he wants to access an application that is hosted in different site. So depending upon, but that communication that is within your uh, data center, that is called the intranet communication, and anything that goes on the internet on a public, that calls the internet communication. So there are basically the two kind of communication that we have. So customer wants to access either any one of them, okay, and accordingly he can connect to SSID. So that means, can customer corporate user access the internet? Yes, or may not be, depending upon what setup you have. There are certain customer where you give the corporate user no access to the internet. There are set of customers where you provide them a limited access to the internet with limited access to the website. Okay, and then we have the guest user who definitely need access to the internet. Okay, still all sites are not allow, so we have limitations there also, but those things uh, will be covering in a different way. So just for you understanding how things work in a wireless. So once your user connect to your access point, then between access point and core switch, what happened that you pass all the VLAN. Okay, so that means there is a corporate VLAN, for example, let's say 500, and then a guest VLAN with that's called a 501. So between access point and access switch, you use the access port. And for example, let's take an access port gig 1/1/1. In this gig interface, you will what you'll do, you will pass VLAN 500 and VLAN 501. Same communication that you will be passing between access switch and core switch also. Same VLAN information you will be passing. Then only user traffic will be moved from one device to another device. So once user connect to the access point, then what happened exactly once you have all this information passed is already in your place, there will be a tunnel established between your access point and your mobility controller. Now this tunnel will be passed, that's called the GRE tunnel. Okay, so question again can be asked like, what kind of tunnel form between access point and a mobility controller? That's called the GRE tunnel. Okay, now again, the kind of setup that you have, like there are multiple mode that we have in Aruba Wireless. That's called the tunnel mode, decrypt tunnel mode, split tunnel mode. Okay, and accordingly, as to the type of mode that we are going to cover further, your encryption and decryption method varies. So on a very high level, that's very common that there will be a tunnel, but the traffic will be encrypted on the access point, or the traffic will be encrypted between the tunnel, and then decrypt on the mobility controller. That depend upon which kind of mode you are using. Okay, so there will be a tunnel between access point and mobility controller. All the traffic will move from this point to mobility controller via this tunnel, and then this information that this user is connected, and he wants to, for example, guest user wants to connect to, uh, for example, this customer A who wants to connect to guest SSID. Now guest SSID have certain limitation. He won't be allow everything on the in data center, on either on the internet, depending upon how you have set up the policy. So what your traffic will do, once it will connect to the access point, a tunnel will be formed with the mobility controller. Mobility controller will send the traffic to the authentication server. Authentication server will check and authorize the user depending upon whether he has a permission or not. Whatever permission he will have, he will pass the information to the mobility controller. Mobility controller will see whether the destination is for internet or intranet. If he is for the internet, it will send the traffic to firewall, and then firewall send the traffic to the internet depending upon by after applying the policy. And if it is for the intranet, then he will be sent back to the data center to access the that specific application or whatever he has been authorized to do that. So this is a very simple and normal approach that we have. So from here, as you can see that we have a mobility controller on a site. We have a mobility master on a data center. So what exactly mobility master does? So between mobility master and mobility controller, we have the IPsec tunnel. Okay, this tunnel is called the IPsec tunnel. So your monitoring of mobility controller, your pushing of configuration to mobility controller, your entire controlling, troubleshooting, everything is done by mobility master. So mobility master is what is a centralized approach, centralized management system of your mobility controller. So all your mobility controller run in today's date, all your mobility controller run on Aruba OS 8.0, and mobility controller mostly run on 6.0, and now also on 8.0. Okay, so in terms of management, if you talk about to mobility controller, it is managed by mobility master. On which OS it run? It run on Aruba OS 8.0 and above. Okay, and then we have the mobility controller that we deploy on each side. Now, having said that, you have this understanding about the connectivity, and then what kind of tunnel that is created between the mobility controller and the mobility master, AP and the mobility controller, how the traffic flows from for internet and for the intranet. That is part is also clear. So let me remove these things from here just to make you something more important about Aruba Central. That is a new concept that we have in Aruba Wireless. Okay. Mhm. So as we know that mobility master run on Aruba OS 8.0 and above, then we have now Aruba Central, which is run on Aruba OS 10. So what happened that with the launch of Aruba Central, that is again, it's the same functionality what Mobility Master does, but with a different and advanced features and with advanced technology. So what it does, it replaces the Mobility Master from the data center. So that means in data center, there won't be more any Mobility Master. Instead of using Mobility Master in data center, we are going to use Aruba Central that will run on Aruba OS 10. So that means now your Aruba Central will manage your mobility controller, which was earlier managed by Mobility Master. So that has been removed. And now Aruba Central will be manage your mobility controller. It will also manage your AP. It will also manage your wired connection, wireless. Okay. It will troubleshoot. So everything it will be monitored by centralized management system that you deploy in data center with Aruba Central. So now the concept still remain the same. You deploy the mobility controller on the site. Now, instead of using mobility master, if you have Aruba Central in your network, you deploy Aruba Central on data center. There will be no mobility master. Aruba Central run on Aruba OS 10. So any device that needs to talk to Aruba Central, it has to be migrated to Aruba Central OS code, which is Aruba OS 10. So if mobility controller needs to be migrated or communicated to uh, Aruba Central, preferred is to migrate them to Aruba OS 10. Can we manage mobility master from Aruba Central? Yes, we can manage. The only condition is that your mobility master should run Aruba OS 10. So this is another questions that is normally asked, because depending upon cost and factor, the recommended way that you should not use mobility master when you have Aruba Central in your network. But still there are, certain customer who do not want to move directly. Okay, so in that case, you have to upgrade your mobility master to Aruba OS 10 in order for Aruba Central to monitor them and control them and manage them. Okay, I think it's very much clear to you what exactly this, on a very high level, how this entire concept work in Aruba Wireless. So let's understand each questions that is normally asked during interview. Remember, guys, for every single questions, there can be multiple questions on the same topic. Okay, so we are trying to cover most of the questions, but questions can be asked in a very different way. So that is why I'm just trying to make you understand on a very high level how setup is there, how design is there, how communication will take place, so that you should have this visibility in your mind. So let's start this now. What is Aruba Central? Aruba Central is Aruba cloud-based network management platform that provides centralized orchestration, monitoring, troubleshooting, and analytics for wired, wireless, and WAN infrastructure. So as you can see from this statement, that Aruba Central is basically a new version of Aruba controller, where you centrally manage your wired, wireless, and WAN infrastructure from there. You can troubleshoot from there, you can monitor from there, everything that you can do from your Aruba Central. What is new Aruba OS code? The new OS code is Aruba OS 10. What changed from Aruba OS 8 to Aruba OS 10? So that's the most common questions and important thing that you need to understand the difference between Mobility Master and Aruba Central. So we have categorized them on the basis of their features. So you can see the central management, uh, where on Aruba OS we manage by the Mobility Master, and in Aruba 10 we manage by the Aruba Central. Then we have the controller config hierarchy, Mobility Master based, and the cloud native hierarchy based. Firmware updates in Aruba OS 8, it's done by Mobility Master orchestrate them, and same in Aruba OS 10, Aruba Central pushes them the configuration. Licensing pool, Mobility Master based. Here in Aruba OS 10, centralized cloud license management. Air match and RF optimization. In Aruba OS 8, it's Mobility Master, and Aruba OS 10, cloud-based AI radio. Controller role, that is important in Aruba OS 8, that required both Mobility Master and Mobility Controller both. Whereas in Aruba OS 10, that's optional. You can use Gateway and API or any one of them. Okay. What is Mobility Master in Aruba Wireless? Mobility Master is Aruba centralized network services platform that manage and orchestrate multiple mobility controller. It run on Aruba OS version 8.x and above. So that means from the Mobility Master that you deploy in DC, you basically control or monitor mobility controller that you deploy on each site. And Mobility Master, that means that run on the Aruba OS code 8. Okay, and an Aruba Central that run on Aruba OS 10. So that means Aruba OS 10 or Aruba Central is a replacement of Mobility Master. What are the deployment method for Aruba Mobility Master? Mobility Master runs on as a virtual appliance. It can run on ESXi, KVM, Hyper-V. From there, that means you can deploy on the data center in the form of virtual, and from there you can, manage. And in terms of hardware, we have Mobility Master hardware 5000 and Mobility Master hardware 10,000 series. What is the new name of Mobility Master? The new name is Mobility Conductor. What are functions or features of Mobility Master? So these are the common and most important functions and features that I have tried to explain to here. So one is centralized management. That means from single pane, you can manage your entire wireless configuration and wired configuration from there, as from your global configuration and policy enforcement, everything you can manage from the centralized management. Then we have a hierarchical configuration. That means that uses a multi-level configuration tree. That means you can go to global mode, then group, then device level, So that means the more deeper you go step by step, that means the kind of monitoring, the kind of configuration that you push, that helps to reduce the error and maintain the consistency in the network. Then controller clustering, yes, again with the help of mobility master, you can do the controller clustering. That means you can have a multiple or more than one mobility master in your network in a cluster, and then accordingly you can manage them. And that is normally used for HA, the higher availability or load balancing and seamless client mobility. Live upgrade is another feature that is used by mobility master. Enable hitless firmware update without disconnecting the client. Air match integration, advanced RF optimization across large deployments, user visibility and analytics. Work with App RF, ClearPass, and Airwave or Aruba Central for deep visibility. Licensing management, centralize and pool license AP, PEF, RF protect, and distribute them to controller as needed. REST API and automation, support automation and integration via REST application programming interface API, making it ideal for DevOps network automation workflow. Okay, so these are the most common features of mobility master. Yes, even though we have Aruba Central in place now with the new version code AOS 10, but still there are network who are still using the mobility master, because mobility master is doing 90% of the same work which Aruba Central can do. But now Aruba Central has some more advanced feature and some more firmware upgrade with more security feature. So that's reason in a largest enterprise network, if you look into there, they deploy Aruba Central. Or if you want, you can uh, upgrade your mobility master to Aruba Central. But can we going to use the same Aruba OS 8 version if we upgrade? Those questions we are going to understand further in this video. What is mobility controller? So mobility controller is similar to branch controller in Aruba OS 6, as it can be configured using ZTP, that is zero touch provisioning, and Aruba Activate. The last port of a mobility controller is enabled as a DHCP client on VLAN 4094 in its factory default configuration. So that means, as I said previously, you deploy mobility controller in each site. Mobility controller is managed or by a centralized device that is called the mobility master. Mobility master controller run on Aruba OS 6 and also run on 8. Mobility master run on 8.0 and above. You deploy the mobility controller with the help of ZTP, zero touch provisioning, and Aruba Activate. That means the moment you deploy it, there's basic configuration that required mobility controller. For example, your interface must, you should assign the IP with the dynamic DHCP should be enabled, so that mobility controller can get the IP. Once you get the IP from the DHCP, it will try to resolve the DNS, which is the Aruba Activate. With the help of Aruba Activate, it will try to resolve the DNS. So those steps we'll be understanding further, but just for your information as of now. So the hierarchy is that mobility controller is where you deploy on the site, and you control, manage, and monitor with the help of mobility master that you deploy in data center. What is standalone controller? Aruba OS 8 can also configure a standalone controller. Standalone controller cannot be managed by mobility master and cannot be clustered with other standalone controller. So that is another interesting questions, because till now we have understood we have a mobility controller which is managed by mobility master, those things. But can we have there's a situation where we want to set up a standalone controller? Okay, so that means on a remote site where or in a situation where you have a hub site where you don't want to any secure zone that you have, and you don't want that to be controlled by some centralized management system, and you want to have specific set of users only access or connect to that specific set of or specific controller. That there we use the standalone controller that is not managed by mobility master. And even if you have a multiple standalone controller, both cannot communicate with each other because you cannot cluster them in a single cluster. Explain how many types of access point in Aruba Wireless. So basically there are 6 types of access point in Aruba: campus AP, instant AP, remote AP, mesh AP, USB or Bluetooth IoT gateway AP, on a spectrum analysis AP. Most common use are only these 3. as in a corporate enterprise. These three are uh, very rarely used, but this fifth one is very common, that you can mostly ask now these days, because that's very easy and approachable and cheap to buy and can be used as per the requirement on the remote site, and those things, how and where, that we will be going to understand further. Can AP terminate on mobility controller? If not, where it can terminate? AP cannot terminate on mobility controller, neither on a conductor controller. They must terminate on managed device only. So that means in your network, if you have, your this AP that you connect to the access switch, okay, and then this access switch connect to your core switch where we have your mobility controller, and then this is managed by mobility master. Can we terminate this AP on mobility master? No. Termination means the tunnel that create between, the IPsec or JRE tunnel that create between AP and this controller is only between AP and the mobility controller and not on mobility master. What is campus AP? Campus AP operate as a typical AP. They connect to a controller, require or acquire their configuration, and then service WLAN users. What is mesh AP? Mesh AP are campus AP that use the radio interference as an uplink. Mesh AP use a mesh portal that has a physical connection to the corporate network. The mesh point uses its radio to get an uplink to the corporate network. So one common difference is that mesh AP use a mesh portal. Okay, and these APs are normally used in a situation or in a locality like where we have military services and secure zone where we use this mesh AP. What is air monitor AP? Air monitor AP constantly scan the radio environment to gather IDS and RF information. AP in this mode do not provide services to WLAN clients. That's important difference. What is spectrum analysis? A spectrum analysis AP gathers spectrum data across all operating channels, but does not service clients. It's a spectrum monitor. AP that do service clients and also gather spectrum data on the channel of operation are operating in hybrid mode. You can set up spectrum analysis temporarily or permanently to capture radio signals for analysis purpose. So as you can understand, the number one reason or number one requirement where you can push this spectrum analysis or use of them is, number one, it does not service clients and is normally used for capture the radio signals for analysis. What is remote AP? A remote AP operates very much like campus AP and must go through the internet to reach controller. The common difference between campus AP and remote AP, that remote AP must be go through the internet to reach a controller. To do so, a remote AP set up a VPN tunnel to the controller. You can also use a remote AP as a remote mesh portal, which is basically a remote AP with mesh portal capabilities. This difference that I'm going to explain you further in this video, but that is a very interesting feature of remote AP. What is instant access point? Aruba instant access point is a controller-less architecture for WLAN. In an instant access point deployment, the primary instant access point is configured, and the rest of the instant access point inherit their configuration from the primary. Okay, so basically, if we talk about, there are two methods of access point deployment. One is controller-based, and then we have a controller-less. Controller-based means campus AP and other AP, and controller-less means instant access point. Okay. What are the deployment style for these Aruba AP with its use cases? So that is very interesting questions, and same questions can be asked in a multiple ways with its requirement where we deploy and usage where normally deploy. So depending upon the kind of interview that you guys are giving, these same things can be asked in a different way. For example, campus AP deployment style is controller based. Use case large enterprise and campus. Instant AP standalone, no controller. Small branches, we use it. Remote AP, remote VPN to controller. Remote workers, branch offices. Mesh AP, wireless black hole. backhaul, and cabling not possible or outdoor. Outdoor AP, outdoor rug, campus exterior stadium. Hospitality AP, wall mount, compact, hotels and dormitories. IoT ready AP, PLE, Zigbee or USB options, smart building or IoT deployments. Even though if you can see about outdoor AP and hospitality AP, these are not that I have explained previously, but these are not the type of AP that we could talk about, but these are the category of access point that we have, and then where we can deploy them and what's their uses. So if you have this visibility in your mind, you can understand which AP that needs to be deployed where. Because from the, depending upon which kind of interview that you're giving, if you as a designer, as an architect, if you have to talk about with the client, what exactly you need to explain them, what is the requirement, and what, how we can reduce cost as per the different kind of AP options that you have that you can deploy on a multiple locations as per the requirement.